I've got it up here because if I put it on the floor, then the big people might not pay attention because they won't be able to see it. Now is the time for the color purple. It's also a time of preparation. Do you know, purple is considered a color of kings. And we are preparing for the coming of a king and his going and his coming again. It's kind of mysterious, huh? This preparation takes some time to get into this mystery. So let's see. Let's see how many weeks it takes for Lent to get us ready. And maybe we'll see a little bit about what those pieces are when they're all put together. I wonder what this could be. There's the second one. And a third one. Oh, there's another one. That's 4 pieces. That's 4 weeks. Advent's 4 weeks. I wonder if the mystery of Easter is the same as the mystery of Advent leading up to Christmas. I think that one fits. Maybe. Let's see if there's another one in here. There's another piece. Lent is longer than Advent. Do you suppose that means Easter is a bigger mystery than Christmas? There's another piece. That looks like that one. But they're not the same. They're different. Maybe it goes like that. You know, purple's a pretty serious color. Sometimes people think purple's also sad. I wonder if what's going to happen could be sad. I do know that we take Lent to get ready. And we're getting ready for the one. I think we're also getting ready to find out more about ourselves. I suppose that's supposed to make something. Put that one there. That looks like that fits. No. Oh, that fits. That fits. Oh, I know. Look at this. Look. It's a cross. If I let go, the arms are going to fall. But it's a cross. It's a cross. It's a purple cross. You know, it could be sad. Because Jesus grew up to be a man, and Jesus died on the cross. That's sad. But you know, Jesus is always with us. And that is wonderful. You know what happens? Yeah, didn't plan that as well as I hoped. Look at that. So the color of sadness becomes a color of pure celebration. But you can't have the celebration without the sadness. And you know what? It is so exciting at Easter. And there's so much joy at Easter that it takes another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to get to Pentecost. And Easter turns everything inside out and upside down. So I wonder, where else do you see purple in the church? Yeah, right there, right here. Is there always something purple there? No. How do you feel when you see purple? Okay. I wonder where else you'll see purple today. Yeah, Hannah. The candles are purple. Do you have purple at home? I do. I have this very nice jacket. And now is the time for the color purple, so I wear it. All right. So, let's say a prayer. Dear God, thank you for mysteries. Big mysteries like Christmas and Easter and why are we here? And little mysteries like why do birds fly? Where does the squirrel hide her nuts?
Where does the squirrel hide her nuts?
And where did Mom put the keys?
And where did Mom put the keys?
Thank you for all of your mysteries. Help us keep watch. And realize we don't have to know everything.
We don't have to know everything.
Except that you love us.
Except that you love us.
Amen. All right. So you guys are going off with Lauren to Sunday school.
Good morning. This morning we hear 3 stories of Jesus' healing ministry. As we hear about the obvious external healing that Jesus facilitates, perhaps think about what deeper healing might accompany the occasions. We're reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 19 to 30. As Jesus was speaking, a synagogue official came up, knelt down and said, "My daughter has just died, but if you come and lay hands on her, she will live." Jesus got up and went with the official, and so did the disciples. As they were going along, a woman who had suffered from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the hem of his cloak. She was saying to herself, "If only I can touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned around and saw her. "Courage, daughter," he said. "Your faith has healed you." That very moment, the woman was healed. When Jesus arrived at the house of the synagogue official, a noisy crowd had gathered, and the flute players, who served as mourners, had already arrived. When he saw them, he said, "Get out! The child is not dead, only asleep." They all laughed at him. After the crowd had been put out, he entered and took the girl by the hand, and she got up, and the news spread throughout the countryside. As Jesus moved on from Capernaum, 2 blind people followed and cried out, "Heir to the house of David, have pity on us." When Jesus reached his lodgings, they caught up with him. Jesus said to them, "Do you believe I can do this?" They said, "Yes, Rabbi." Then he touched their eyes and said, "Because of your faith, it will be done to you." And their sight returned. May the Spirit bless us with understanding and insight from this reading.
Thank you, John, for sharing those readings with us. And congratulations to all of you for being in church this morning. You're a hearty bunch. I'm very, very impressed. Not only did you lose an hour's sleep, but this is the morning when an awful lot of people decide to take off to Florida and just desert us altogether. So you're all here. I guess that means you're all broke or... But here's a couple right here. Stand up, you two. Stand up. This is Jen and Scott DeCoste. Do you know these guys? They're just a beautiful couple in our congregation. They decided to buck the trends, and they went off to the Northwest Territories and Alaska and did dog sledding and all this stuff. And you came back for March break just to reinforce for us that Florida is not where it's at. This is where it's at, right? Had a great adventure with your kids. Great to have you back. And as a little consolation prize for all of you this morning, Ashley LeBlanc, stand up. This is a relatively new gal in our congregation, been here a while, contributing. Ashley, stand up back there. I met Ashley this morning. She's the one who did those incredible fruit skewers that you've been eating, and everybody's been loving, so give her a big hand. You're a sweetheart, Ashley. Thank you so much. You sort of help to perk up our morning a little bit. Everybody needs a little energy. So, as Natalie shared with us, we're halfway, better than halfway through Lent. Almost Easter is just around the corner. It's just mind-boggling. So the other good thing about being halfway through Lent is not only that we're closer to Easter, but that spring is on the way as well. And Lent comes from that word lengthen, an Old English word, which means to lengthen. So the days are lengthening, the sun is getting warmer, and we know that even this snow that we have isn't going to last forever, right? So it's all good. And we have a good reminder in nature at this time of year as well that hope is on the way. But Lent itself is traditionally a time of kind of deeper reflection and introspection on our human lives and on how we're called as Christians to follow this path of Jesus more fully. And the path of Jesus, including the path of life, is one that often involves struggle and difficulty. And so Lent has often been a time of reflecting on how do we remain faithful, how do we be followers of Christ, how do we be disciples of Christ? Not just in the good times, not just down in Florida, but up here where the snow falls in the middle of March. In those periods of time in our life that are not always easy, that can be rocky, that can be challenging, can be difficult. And I loved Natalie's story this morning. She is just a quintessential born storyteller, and she was modeling a little bit of the godly play storytelling process with children, which is not always up and excited with kids, but it's quiet and it's reflective as well, right? And when Natalie and I talked about the story about this mystery of Lent and of the process of Lent transforming into Easter, that gave me the inspiration for this morning's kind of reflection or talk with you myself. Because this, hi Rob, this whole Lenten Easter trajectory is a passage that moves from struggle and suffering and difficulty to joy, from purple to white. And that's a huge part of what the Christian message and reflection and the call to a life of discipleship with Jesus is about. It's about entering more deeply into this recognition that despite the struggles and the heartaches and the difficulties in life, there is a flip side to those. You know, we sometimes say suffering and joy, those two don't go together, right? But what Natalie's story so beautifully illustrates for us is that they are inextricably connected and intertwined. It's almost like you can't have one without the other. And so her story gave me that kind of a little bit of inspiration to think about the mystery of Lent, Easter, and the pertinence of that in our lives. And we see it in the life of Jesus all the time, and the readings that John over here shared with us earlier about these healings that Jesus conducted. Remember, there's in the Gospel of Matthew tells us about 3 healings that all seem to run together at this one point in Jesus' ministry. And one is Jairus, a synagogue official. He loses, his daughter dies, and he's understandably overcome with enormous grief. And then there's this woman who's been hemorrhaging. They didn't have health care and medical treatment in that day and age like we do today, and she's been hemorrhaging, it says. How many years? Remember? 12 years. An incredibly long time she's been struggling with this kind of condition. And she can't get a handle on it. And then there's these 2 blind people. In Jesus' day and age, there were a lot of destitute people. It was really, really hard just to survive for a lot of people. But if you were blind, there weren't any social welfare systems in that day and age. You were really in trouble. And somehow they managed to cope and had each other's support. And Matthew says that every single one of the people in each of those situations somehow heard about Jesus and they found Jesus. And he says that this is actually a profound part of the story. He says, it wasn't Jesus' healing energy or special power that healed these people. Jesus says to these people, what is it that healed you? It was their own faith, right? It was their own willingness and openness to turn towards the divine, to trust that the divine was manifest in Jesus, and it was their willingness to turn towards the light, towards God, their openness to that, that actually brought about their healing. And Matthew's trying to encourage that in all of us as well. But as I got thinking about each of those situations and about the theme for today, I was thinking, yes, each of those people was ostensibly healed. Jairus' daughter, turns out she wasn't dead after all. She was just in some kind of a coma or something or other, and Jesus managed to bring her back into the fullness of life. And the hemorrhaging woman did find the hemorrhaging stopped, and the blind people were cured of their blindness. But the insinuation in those stories is that there was something else that also took place in each of those stories. Something more profound than the surface healing. That's what Matthew's getting at when he says, it was their faith that healed them. Each of those people in the process of a physiological kind of healing actually was released into a deep and profound trust in God, was released into a deep and profound faith that was actually probably more transformative in some ways than the actual physical healing. Jairus, who is on the surface, he probably didn't have a lot of trust in Jesus or Jesus' message, but he's released into a much deeper relationship with God through that process of the healing of his daughter. And the hemorrhaging woman as well recognizes that she is profoundly loved. And her hemorrhaging in that society, any kind of illness like that meant that you were segregated, you were disbarred from society, you lost your relationships, you lost your experience of love. But she will have encountered love, she will have encountered relationship with people once again. And just think over the years what she developed in the process of coming to that point. She developed a determination and a perseverance. You can see it in her. She says, if only I can touch his cloak, if I can get through all these people and just touch his cloak, I'll be healed. That's like, she's developed a determination, a patience, and a perseverance. She's going to get there. She probably never would have had if she hadn't gone through that tussle with this illness over the years. And the blind people, the suggestion is that the blindness that they were relieved of wasn't just physical blindness, but they too were released into this deep kind of new insight and wisdom in relationship with God through Jesus. The message of the Gospels and in the whole ministry of Jesus and in this whole mystery of Lent, Easter, is that suffering and struggle contains within it seeds of new life, new hope, new possibilities, and even joy. Do you trust that? Do you believe that? I'm asking you. How many of you have, in the midst of your struggle or suffering, whatever it is, recognized that maybe there's something good? There are some seeds of new life and possibility and hope that can come out of this process. Often, we don't recognize it right at the moment. Often, right at the moment, we're just saying, take this away from me, God. I don't want any of this pain. Why do I have to go through this? But in retrospect, we discover, oh, I'm a different person because of it. I'm a changed person because of it. It's actually been a gift to my life in some remarkable way. We don't always see it, just like when seeds are in the ground, but the seeds of new life and possibility are inherent within the pain and suffering. And why? It's a weird thing, right? But here's my take on that. My take on it is that I'm like all of you. Human beings, we tend to be complacent. We tend to get comfortable. We tend not to want to grow unless there's something that's pushing us to grow. Life is, we like the status quo. We like things to stay the same. We don't like to have to move and change and develop because it's always a little bit uncomfortable. And yet, the calling of life, if you can talk about God having an intention in life, God's intention in life is not just that we sit on our patouches every day and just stay the same and never grow or develop. God's intention for life is indeed that we grow, we move past our present limitations, whatever they might be, physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. God's intention for our lives is that we grow into the full potential of what it means to be human. And that we grow into that potential, and that the greatest potential is to allow God's Spirit to flow through, to emerge through these limited human lives, and to reflect the potential of these lives. And the truth of the matter is that it's a pain, and we don't like it, but it seems to be the truth that without some kind of goad, some kind of push, some kind of struggle in life, we so often don't grow. It doesn't have to be that way, but that seems to be more common than not. And so within the purple, the color white is already contained. But there's one condition with that. We have to somehow, and that's what our faith journey is all about, we somehow have to trust that. Because we all know people too who have encountered struggle and suffering and pain in their lives, and they've said, I hate this. Why is the universe visiting this up on me? And they turn their backs on it, and they refuse to acknowledge or to learn from the situation. And they often go through the rest of their lives in bitterness or in despair, or the whole world is at fault. It's never my problem, right? You know people like that? It's not my problem. It's not my issue. I didn't do anything. Everybody else is wrong. The whole world is wrong, right? And so this message that Natalie is bringing to us today is, if we can trust that within the purple there's a flip side, which is the white, and that's what you're getting at, and we start to look for it, then we will find it. The seeds of new life and possibility are there. It's in our personal lives and in our collective lives. Think about it in your personal lives. Some health crisis strikes, right? Many of us have had a health crisis in our lives. Health crises result from all sorts of random and uncontrollable variables. But health crises often also contain within them seeds of our own involvement, our own engagement. It might be lifestyle factors, or it might be too busy, we might be encountering too much stress, or there might be historical factors. A health crisis can indeed cause us to look at our lives and to grow significantly as we try to say, what is this health crisis trying to teach me? And even when there's not a cure for a health crisis, and sometimes there aren't. We've all known situations like that. And yet I've known lots of people, even though as they looked at their health crisis, they weren't cured, but they discovered a wisdom and a learning within themselves and through the crisis that led to healing. They might not have been cured, but they were healed. They developed a deep and profound new wisdom about themselves and about life and about love. It's quite wonderful. And many would say, I wouldn't have exchanged this for anything. Think about relationship crises. How many of you have ever been in a relationship crisis? No, you don't have to put up your hands. If we didn't get into struggles in our relationships, at work or at home or with our spouses or with our kids, life would be boring for one thing, and we also wouldn't grow. We all of us carry forward from our childhood, we carry our baggage, we carry our emotional injuries, we carry our limitations, our incapacity to love, which goes back into all sorts of wounds all through our life. And it's our tussles and our struggles as we grow as adults. It's those kinds of challenges that really make us look at that stuff and make us and encourage us to learn how to work with it and to grow through it and to learn to be love much more fully, learn to manifest love much more fully. I say this sort of tongue-in-cheek, but my daughter was a wonderful spiritual teacher for me. Yeah, and I bet the same is the case for all of you as well. You know what I'm saying. And the same is true collectively as a society as well. You know, the first couple of weeks of Lent, I was talking about this whole relationship that the church and Canadian culture has with the Indigenous people of this country. And you know, many of us say, it's not I'm not responsible for the injustices and the challenges and the heartache and the anger that is still present in the Indigenous country of this Canada. It's not my issue. Let's move on and get on with things. And yet we forget that the legacy of that pain and struggle is one that we're benefiting from right now, right? We benefit from the history, the colonialization and the imperialist kind of, suppression of Indigenous peoples in this country. And you think about it culturally, we have this ongoing struggle within our culture about how do we achieve justice and reconciliation with the Native people of this country. And there's this tension. And there's also, we know that so many Indigenous young people in the country, because of the historical background and the legacy that continues in our world today, they don't contribute fully to our society. But just think, if as a society, we and our Indigenous people in this country could really work it out together, if we really did come to resolution, and we've gone a good step that way in terms of the residential school history, but if we could continue to walk down that road to a really just and equitable relationship, we would all be so much better off. We would all be happier. We would all be more whole. The Indigenous people would feel fully a part of our society. They would contribute fully in our society. And we could remove that kind of legacy of guilt and conflict and everything that we continue to carry as a burden. Think about in the United States. Think about this whole crazy culture that's going on down there. It's this whole struggle around it with all these mass murders and on all these guns. That's an ongoing legacy of fear and angst that goes all the way back to the founding of that country. And it's only in dealing with that challenge in our present moment that country can overcome its cultural brokenness as well. It's a huge cultural neuroses that exists in the United States around guns, but it's linked to the founding of the country. But when we can see that whole challenge right now as an opportunity to deal with that past history, to really deal with that struggle, then we can recognize that in the midst of all this horror that's going on in the U.S. around with guns right now, there are seeds of hope and new possibility there as well. Rick did this lovely prayer earlier in our service, at the beginning of the service, that linked with that beautiful song. We don't have to fear. If we don't have to fear the struggle or the pain or whatever it is that we're going through in our lives. Struggle and difficulty and challenge is simply a part of life. But if we can learn to see the seeds of new life and possibility and even joy that exist in every one of our challenges, at the personal level and at the cultural level, if we can see the possibilities, maybe not even always for cure, but for healing and for well-being, then there is hope. And there's new life. And there's no need to fear. God is here. Spirit is here. All the people who encountered Jesus in his healing ministry encountered not just a physiological healing. Every person who encountered Jesus encountered something much deeper and more profound. They encountered a healing of their psyche, their emotions, their spirit, and there was even healing that went on in the culture. Namaste. The Spirit in me honors the Spirit in all of you. Natalie, thank you for the inspiration this morning.
See me as I am, scars and no spirit flesh.
Reach me if you can. I'm a real life woman, man.
Hold me, then let me go. If I stay too long, your inner Christ won't grow. Doubt me, there's nothing new. I am here believing in you. Trust me. It takes time to love yourself, for you are divine. Hold me, then let me go. I stay too long, your inner Christ won't grow. Hold me, then let me go. If I stay too long, if I stay too long, your inner Christ won't grow. Peace be with us every time. Every time we doubt ourselves. Every time we doubt ourselves. Peace be with us every time. Every time. Every time we doubt ourselves. Peace be with us every time. Every time, every time, every time. Every time we doubt ourselves. Every time we doubt ourselves. Peace be with us every time.
Every time we doubt ourselves.
Thank you, Natalie, for those inspiring words in the children's story. It gave me a real good place to go for the prayers for the community. Let us center ourselves and think about struggle and challenge as a part of life, about it being human. Sometimes it's collective, sometimes it's floods or fires, sometimes it's more personal. And help us move from purple to the white. Let us pray. Mother and Father God, through our relationship with God, help us recognize that suffering is a part of life. It can help us develop our capacity to cope and empathy for others. Through our relationship with God, help us see suffering as an opportunity to understand and appreciate what truly matters in life. Through our relationship with God, help us be more vulnerable, to rely on others for help and support others in need. Through our relationship with God, help us move past judgment to a place of openness. And through our relationship with God, help us shift our priorities to what really matters, relationships, and places where we can have impact. Through our relationship with God, help us recognize our limitations and appreciate what we can and cannot control. And as a BUC community and personally, let us look beyond ourselves and respond with compassion and understanding to those who are suffering, particularly our First Nations communities. Let us read the 94 recommendations in the Truth and Reconciliation document with a goal to responding as a community and personally, helping to move this call for action forward. Amen.
Let's rise and sing together like a healing stream. Like a healing stream in a barren desert. Oh, wait, let's do that intro again. There it is. We're gonna sing together. 1, 2. Like a healing stream in a barren desert, spirit water bringing life to dusty earth. God is trampling through our lives as in a dream unfolding, promising revival and rebirth. Like a healing stream. A gentle rain on a thirsty garden, spirit water come to nourish tiny seed. God is bubbling through the soil to coax a new creation, yearning for an end to
want and need, like a gentle rain. Like a river strong with a restless current, spirit water rushing on to distant shore. God is carving out a channel in a new direction, calling for an end to hate and war. Like a river strong. Like a mighty sea, reaching for horizons, spirit water with a love both deep and wide. God is working in our hearts to shape a new tomorrow. God will always challenge and provide. Like a mighty sea, like a river strong, like a gentle rain, like a healing stream.
So as we go forward, we think of Darwin as the guy who said, survival of the fittest, but he actually believed that humans were social and caring species. You don't hear that as much. So as we go forward, let us go out into the world and treat others with kindness and respect. And through God, we can be a source of healing. Namaste.